Hello and welcome. What is linguistics? The word linguistics is noun and linguistic is the adjective form of the word linguistics, and it refers to what we call pertaining or belonging to language or languages. The word is in the word linguistics refers to a discipline of science, and the word linguist, it's noun and refers to the person who studies language or languages. So this is basically the literal interpretation of the word linguistics. We continue and have some more ideas to discuss about linguistics. In a nutshell, in brief, linguistics is the scientific study of language, analytical study of language, logical discussion of language, rational discussion of language. We have some more ideas about this. Linguists apply the scientific method to conduct formal studies of speech sounds, how people speak. It is related to phonetics, gestures, how people use language or communicate language through gestures, grammatical structures, and meaning across thousands of languages in the world. So the job of linguists are that they apply scientific method, scientific ways to conduct formal studies of all these elements within the language. Not of a particular language, but could be a number of languages at the same time. In other words, we can say linguists are not only polyglots. Polyglots means those who know many languages. So linguists are not only polyglots, grammarians, and word lovers. In fact, they are researchers dedicated to the systematic study of language, rational study of language. We continue our discussion about linguistics. In a simple language, we can say that linguistics is learning about language rather than learning a language. Learning about language refers to a lot of historical development taking place in language. You want to study the descriptive analysis of the language. You want to know everything about language, how it originated, how it is being spoken, how it is being used, how it is changing as the time progresses, and so on. Learning a language is like learning grammar, to speak the language, to use the language, to know the language, to communicate with the people. Like generally common people learn a language. Learning about a language, it goes one step above, one step ahead of. Once you know the language, you can talk about language. Learning about language is an area of linguist. Learning a language is an area for the common people who want to learn a language, to speak and to communicate with the people. That is basically the idea here. Let's review the lesson, what we have discussed so far. Linguistics is the scientific study of language. Linguists apply the scientific method to conduct formal studies of speech sounds, gestures, grammatical structures, and meaning across thousands of languages in the world. We have next point. In other words, linguists are not only polyglots, grammarians, and word lovers. In fact, they are researchers dedicated to the systematic study of language. And the last point in this discussion is, in simple language, we can say that linguistics is learning about language rather than learning a language. Hope you understand the concept. What is linguistics? Definition of linguistics by G. Duffy. According to G. Duffy, linguistics observes language in action. When we say language in action, what does it mean? That is to say, language in use, language being spoken, language in fashion. How do people speak the language? How do people use the language? How language affects our day-to-day thinking and activities of life? How language participates in our day-to-day events? That is the point here, language in action. As a means for determining, and this determines, and this sets a goal, an objective, paves the ground for what? How language has developed. How language has come to the point where it is now. How we speak the language we speak today. The language we speak today, was it same the language before or 100 years before? How it functions today? How the language that we speak helps us today, affects us today, shapes our linguistic course of thinking today? That is the point here. And how it is currently evolving. As we know, language is not static. It is always changing. So how language is evolving? How language is changing? What are the forces which make an impact upon the language? In modern time, if you look at this aspect, like how it is currently evolving, technological advancement has played a key role in the evolution of language. In modern time, we have come across a lot of such words we never heard before, like 10 years, 20 years before, like Facebook, YouTube, Google and so on. So this is the definition or interpretation of the definition given by GDEF. Let's review the definition, what I have just talked about and explained in a way I understand. Linguistics observes language in action as a means for determining how language has developed, how it functions today, and how it is currently evolving. Definition of linguistics by Espit Coder. According to Espit Coder, linguistics is concerned with nature of human language. And what is the nature of human language? How it is learned, how it is acquired. Is it learned through a structured system? Is it learned through deliberate attempt like second language acquisition? Or is it acquired as we experience in having the knowledge of our mother tongue, first language? And what part it plays in the life of the individual? And what does language play the role in the life of an individual? How does language affect the personality of an individual? How does language shape the behavior of an individual? And not only the individual, also the community. How a particular community is known by the language it speaks, how the supremacy of language sometimes is associated with the community, and so on. So basically, linguistics is concerned with the nature of human language, in the way it is learned, in the way it is acquired, and in the way the part it plays, the role it plays in the life of an individual and the community. This is basically the idea behind the definition given by Espit Coder. Okay, so now let's review the definition. Linguistics is concerned with the nature of human language, how it is learned, and what part it plays in the life of the individual and the community. Espit Coder. I hope definition of linguistics by Jean Atishtian. According to Jean Atishtian, linguistics tries to answer two basic questions, two basic fundamental beliefs it has. And what is that? The first one is, what is language? As a normal human being, if you think about what is language, what comes to your mind is that language is something that happens in the mind, that originates in the mind, that occurs in the mind. Mind is the birthplace of language. And if you think about language is the creation of the mind, it takes you to the area of psycholinguistics. But another individual, another person might look at language from different point of view. He might relate language and the brain that helps language to process, the mechanism it develops to generate language in the mind. And if you look at the language from this point of view, this takes you to neurolinguistics. But there may be another person who might think language not as the creation of mind, not as the mechanism of brain. Rather, language is the result of social communication. Language is the result of society. Language originates in the society. People speak language in the society. Society creates the language. Society makes the language happen. If you look at language from this point of view, this might take you to social linguistics. And there could be a number of other areas with which you can relate what is language. Once you establish your area of interest, your area of discovery, your area of knowledge, what is language? Then the next question that comes to our mind is, how does language work? Once you establish the fact that there's a deep connection between the mind and the language, which leads you to psycholinguistics, then you begin to explore the analytical methods that help you develop the connection between the language and the mind. In the same fashion, once you come to the belief that there is certain mechanism in the brain that helps language happen, then you begin to look at the ways how it works. Likewise, you have society and language. Once you know, or once you establish the fact that there's a deep connection between language and society, and of course there is, then you want to know, how does it work? How does society help language happen? How does brain help language happen? How does mind help language happen? So these are two basic questions according to Jean Atishtian. And the first question is, what is language? And the second question is, how does language work? And I think in these two questions, we get the answers of most of the possible questions that might originate from the idea of what basically linguistics is all about. So I love this definition in this way because of its comprehensive nature. Most of the definitions in their own ways are complete. Okay, a review of definition. Linguistics tries to answer two basic questions, and the first one is, what is language? And the second one is, how does language work? Jean Atishtian. Hope you understand the concept. Thank you and goodbye.